Welcome everyone to our Tag Marshall webinar. In this expert session, we will be looking at 5 ways Glen Oak Country Club is managing pace and flow of play exceptionally well, keeping members happy during a busy season. And busy, you've all seen in the last 2 years. So we're delighted to have Danny Mulhearn join us. He's the PGA head golf pro at Glen Oak Country Club. Danny, how are you and welcome?
Good morning, Bodo. Thank you for inviting me into the process. I'm doing great, thanks.
100%. Danny, to tee you off, please do tell us a little bit about your wonderful club, where you're located. If you find a second or 5 to tell us about the fantastic logo that I know everyone in Chicago knows well, and then also about yourself and your professional golf career.
Sure, absolutely. Again, my name is Danny Mulhearn. I'm the golf professional here at Glen Oak Country Club. This is my 23rd year that I'm starting here. I was lucky enough to have a position at a facility called Cantini Golf down the road for 10 years. So my family and I have been here in the west suburbs of Chicago for the last 30 years. It's been phenomenal. Glen Oak is a neighborhood club. We have about 75% of our membership live within 10 miles of the club. So it's very family oriented and a nice little neighborhood in a quiet suburb. We are 110 years old this year. We have about 400 members with all our classifications added up. In a nutshell, pre-COVID, we did between 18 and 19,000 rounds. Post-COVID, like most of you all are probably experiencing, we're upwards of 22,000 rounds the last 2 years. So having a service and an opportunity like Tag Marshall to help us with our PACE programs and just basically enhancing the experience for all of our members has been a key part to our success the last couple of years. With regards to our logo, as Bodo mentioned, he thought it was a neat story yesterday when we discussed it.
It's not a statue of Danny, is it?
No, it's not. Although I did spend many years caddying, which got me into the business. That is actually a replica of one of our caddies. One of our caddies back in the 20s was asked to be a model for some of our founding members when they wanted to build a statue for the club. And so we have Pinky, as his name is. He was a fair-skinned, probably Irishman like me, and he would sunburn in the winter, in the summertime, and so they called him Pinky, and that's our logo. No words, no nothing, just Pinky the caddy. So that's our brief story.
Thank you, Danny. I think it's wonderful that the club really highlighted one of its unsung heroes, right? The people who are closest to the golfers and closest to the service. I think it's amazing. So yeah, great for hanging on to that, and a wonderful tradition. So you were there for your 100th anniversary then at the club, were you?
I sure was.
Wonderful.
Seems like I've been here longer than that, some of the members say, but it was a neat event, that's for sure. Not many people get to do that.
Nice. Okay. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. Tell us which of the greens are we looking here? With
you are looking. I'm sorry, you're looking at the 18th green towards the clubhouse. A great view from the patio. We're just preparing to take to membership a clubhouse renovation, which will make even greater views coming into 18.
Oh wow! So no pressure finishing off your round, and also no pressure if you've been out of position and had a tail of other players, right?
None whatsoever.
Okay, wonderful. Danny, we've got literally 5 points to talk through, so let's go with it. If you'll allow me just a quick introduction to Tag Marshall. So we are a golf course optimization technology. We focus on anything on-course operations and on-course traffic management. So we're solving golf hazard traffic problem, and that's what we came to solve and add value to. We now have tracked way over 20 million. We actually need to update this calculation because we're adding a couple of million annually, and certainly with COVID, that was boosted further. And we have more than 350 clubs that are partnering with us. And among those are 30 of the top 100 in the US. So that's your elite private club, and also your bucket list daily fee / resort. One of them is close by to you guys, Whistling Straits, hosted a wonderful Ryder Cup this season. You mentioned that, or you probably would have seen a bit of traffic around that time, and it was wonderful to have fans, obviously. And then another household name that's not too far from you, if I'm not mistaken, is Cog Hill. How far are you from Cog Hill?
We're about 15 miles north of Cog Hill.
There you go. Good guess there on my part. Yes. So yeah, it's amazing to work with such fantastic partners who obviously are really good at what they do, and we're learning a lot. But it's also delightful for us to see how many of the really just good clubs are turning towards technology and making use of it and achieving the exact same level of results than these standout clubs. And Danny and his team is one such story. So we're delighted to have you here today. We're also tech partners to the European Tour, another great partnership where we get to learn a lot, and we help the USGA and the RNA with data. For instance, we also track the RNA's World Amateur Championships that was played in Ireland just before COVID, and just looking to add value where we can. It's been a fantastic journey, and lots more to come. But getting back to Danny, so we are talking about the 5 steps that you have taken at the club to ensure that you create the best possible member experience. And obviously, prioritization of pace and flow of play as an experience factor is a decision that you needed to make, right, as a team, but also as leadership. So what was that like for you, and how did you come to the place where you said, okay, this is something that we want to get some help with, and we want to do this as well as we possibly can? What was that like at the club?
Sure, absolutely.
The decision to get to that.
Well, as most private club professionals know, and most members of private clubs join so they can have a facility that they can come out and enjoy the day and move around at a good pace. That's a big part of being a member of a private club, is having that amenity. When we were approaching COVID, we started getting busier, but certainly when we hit COVID, things got very busy. We had a lot of people joining the club that weren't your typical member that worked his entire life to achieve that amenity. A lot of these younger members were joining just because that was what they could do, and they had the opportunity to. So we had to refocus on pace of play, because we had a lot of beginning golfers that were out there, and they meant no harm. They just weren't in tune with how quick 4 hours can go for some people, or how slow 4 hours can go for some people. So we had to get everybody on the same page with that. And Tag Marshal was a big part of it.
Yeah, but what a blessing to have younger members join. And I'm sure you would have had programs to try and attract those in previous years, and it's not always easy. And now Amen. They came, right? So you need to do the right thing for them. So it's great to see that you put so much focus on it.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions I'd like to ask you, obviously you having been the custodian of literally hundreds of thousands of golf rounds, what would you say are the top 3 experience factors for golfers out of this list that we have here? And that's in no particular order: course design, course conditioning, clubhouse and amenities, pace and flow of play, playing partners in my group, accessibility, tee time availability, and lastly, cost and value. What would you say floats to the top for golfers if they had to pick 3, and what would you pick?
Well, for here at Glen Oak, it's one is course conditioning, and I'll just go down the list alphabetically there. It's important that they have a course that they can brag about, especially when they bring guests out. They want them leaving knowing that they played one of the best conditioned courses that they were at. 2, I would say, is accessibility. being able to get to the golf course and play when they like. And then last and not least is pace of play. You know, when they come out, the majority of the members want to get done and then hang out with their buddies or head to the pool with the family or get home and get back to work. So I would say those three are key here at Glen Oak.
And you certainly have the conditioning, right? Judging by the wonderful photos. Which of the holes is that we're looking at here?
That is hole number 10, sitting out by one of our 2 ponds. But yeah, we're known as having some of the best greens anywhere. It's we're very fortunate. Our superintendent's been here a long time, and he does it right.
No, that it really shows. Fantastic. And yeah, accessibility, tee time availability. Obviously, great that you have so many of the members in close proximity. That gifts them a bit more time, I guess, because they don't have to travel for an hour or more, as we're seeing in some of our New York partners. Yeah, the tee time availability gets tricky if you have fully booked membership, right? And you still need to do right by everyone. So
right.
This is where having real control over things is probably helpful. Yeah, maybe to add to the points that you mentioned, and the USGA research confirms that course conditioning is top. I think it's 82% of players saying that's their critical experience factor. And then very close to that is, in fact, who's in my playing group as well. Like, who do you pair me up with? Please don't pair me with that strange single that's just walked in. And then the pace and flow of play is ranked at 74% of players, saying that's really important to them. But here's a further deeper research that was done by somebody upstate from you in Wisconsin. So there's the University of Wisconsin are partners to the USGA, and they have a big PGA study program. And this is Professor Christina Schoonover. She is a researcher, but also the head of operations at Erin Hills. So she's wearing 2 hats, the academic and really deep into golf. And her specialty is customer experience research, right? So they did deep research into what really matters to golfers, because the USGA wanted to find out so that they could then advise their member clubs to say, do these things better, and these ones don't maybe rank as high as you would have thought. So what they found is that out of 1,000 touch points in a golf experience, and a touch point includes loading your golf bags into the trunk or driving through the gate at the club. That's all a single touch point. That's all part of that experience. Booking your rounds, all of those things. The worst ranking in terms of this, the worst thing you can do to me as a golfer is corrective pace of play actions. Danny, tell me what that looks like if it's done really badly, because I'm sure you maybe walked in those shoes. What does corrective pace of play action look like if it's done badly?
I learned from doing it bad occasionally. Here at Glen Oak, I mean, if you go up to a group and tell them they're playing slow, they're going to say, no, we're not. Sure. That certainly, anytime anybody's told that they are not doing what they're supposed to be doing or not behaving well, they're going to put up a shell, and it's not going to be comfortable for anybody. So I would agree 1,000% with that, that any kind of pace of play discussion can be and usually is taken as a negative.
Yes. Yeah, you the key term to avoid here is slow, right? This is like saying to somebody, you have a low IQ in conversation. You're never going to get anywhere from there on, right? So corrective pace of play actions in that traditional sense, marshalling, saying somebody grunting at people, you're slow, get on with it. That is the worst thing that players have ranked. Incidentally, next to it, also minus 1,000 is other people's speed. So if other people are slow and holding me up, I'm feeling just as aggrieved if somebody comes over to me and says, hey, you're slow, get on with it, right? So that's a conundrum, because we have to manage it, but we have to do it well. And then golfers are making it easy for us by saying, well, if you have positive ranger interactions, positive martial etiquette, that we love. So that's all we have to do, is like do it well and constructively And then we can take care of both those things. No terrible corrective pace of play actions, and we can take care of other people's speed, making sure that the group ahead of my group stays ahead of me and I don't get held up. And it's as simple as that. Easy, right? Not always, but thankfully there's ways in which clubs are going about that, that they're winning in this field, and we've seen how important it is to players. So you have implemented processes to improve the field flow and the pace. Another great photo, like hats off to your superintendent. It looks phenomenal. When can I join?
You can join in about 10 years.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And I need to be a bit
lists.
closer. I need to be a bit closer too. In terms of processes, well, it revolves around technology for you. Danny, tell me, which of these tag marshal system options did your club go for?
Sure, we have 52 golf carts here. So every one of our golf carts has got a tracking tag that's installed underneath the seat. None of the members know it's there. That's kind of nice. But also we are a heavy walking caddy facility. We got upwards of 200 caddies every year. We give out about $500,000 in caddy fees every year. And we utilize 20 of the walking tags. We don't need many more than that, just because of the number of people you can get on the golf course at one point between the carts and caddies. We don't need any more than that, but that's what we utilize, the walking tags and the cart tags.
Okay, great. Maybe just to add a little bit more context. So the walking tag gets clipped onto a golf bag, or in your case, probably carried by a caddy. One in the group is enough. You're only as fast or slow as your slowest member of the group. So one is enough. And then the carts, they track themselves. Like that's invisible, and you know at any time where everyone is. And that's certainly adds to the line of sight and manageability. Now, what these units do is they send data to our system, and that system then processes that data, and there's algorithms that make sense of it, so that you have a real-time view that is smart of the play out on the course at any time. And then because we have all this amazing data, we also add analytics that the club can then look at. What's our day been like? What's our week been like? What's our month been like? And over time, you can look at comparative data. Are we getting better? What are metrics that we can look at to improve? Danny, who have you got plugged into this? Let me just switch one screen over. So this is what this looks like. We're going to talk what we're looking at here just now. But tell us quickly, who have you got plugged into the system? Assuming also yourself, like who has access to this and who uses it at your club on a daily basis?
Sure, we have our entire golf professional staff utilizes it when we are here. We've got a smaller staff. Myself, 2 full-time assistants, and typically 2 seasonal golf professionals. And whoever's on staff has a role in it. They are either on the tee starting, or they are updating the system in the golf shop when it needs to be, which isn't often. And the rest of us are always paying attention, whether it's on our phones or the handheld that we're provided, or the computer if we're in the golf shop, just to know what's going on at all times. It's nice not having to wait or hear a member calling the golf shop because of a group in front of them. We're always, excuse me, aware of what's going on entirely. A great macro view of the course.
Nice. So in the bottom corner, we have a screen grab of Glen Oak. Unfortunately, we're catching you so late in the season, we can't find any traffic on it any longer. But this is a dummy course, if you will. Our designer has flipped around Erin Hills and planted a few trees on it. But this really is what it looks like for you and the team. You have the only difference is that you would know which is a cart and which is a walker, right? So it's just like a different icon. But this course doesn't exist. You've never been to it. because you don't live in a parallel universe. But you know exactly what's going on this course, right? Tell us, give us a quick 1 minute of what you can see just from having a quick look at it.
Sure, absolutely. The first thing we're looking for is pink. And if we see a pink number, we know that that's a group that is compromising the pace of play for folks behind them. That's the first group we're going to address. However, as a staff, we've all agreed and that it's more important, just as important at least, but more important to talk to all the orange groups behind, because those orange groups behind are behind pace, but it's only because that pink group is affecting their pace. So keeping those folks informed with what's going on ahead of them, letting them know that we're working with that group ahead of them, and hopefully things are picking up nicely. All those green tags that you see, those are all people that are playing at pace or better. And if you see a red tag out there, that means that's a group that's playing behind pace, and we'll visit with them, but we're not going to give them too much push, if you will, because they're basically not holding anyone up behind them. They're playing behind pace, but they're not affecting the pace of people behind them. We will remind them that if anybody does start catching up, they'll need to stay ahead of them, but that's basically what we see when we're looking at that map.
Yeah, really nicely explained here. Maybe just to go under the hood a little bit. So our system calculates across about 60 zones on the course. So every hole is zoned into a number of zones, depending on what par it is. So then we track where is a player versus where they're supposed to be versus their start time, right? But also we look at their relative distance in terms of time gap to one another. And then our system goes as far as saying, well, if you are early in the round and falling out of position, we weight you higher than somebody who's on the 18th and starting to fall out of position, because you're on the 18th and now you're losing a few balls. Well, you can't do much more damage, you're almost off. But if you're early in the round, that's when it's critical to get on top of things. And then we then present that to you, Danny, and your team, so that you know what to prioritize, and you're not driving around looking for issues. Do you remember a time when your team had to do that?
Many a times. If I could add real quick, Bodo, just to let everybody know, that right-hand column is what you get when you click on one of your tags. And so where you see number 17 at the top of that right-hand column, we clicked on tag 17. It gives us the information of who's in that group. But a point I'd like to show that I really like, Bodo, and we haven't mentioned this in the past, but underneath pace trend, you can see the mini bar graph. And what that tells us before we go out there is that we can see that they were moving along pretty good and probably had a little bit of trouble starting on hole number 3, but most of the trouble on hole number 5. So we at least have some information to understand that, okay, maybe they lost the ball, hit one in the water, or whatever the case may be. But it's nice having that intel saying that they're just not chronically slow, and we can acknowledge that with them ahead of time. And boy, is that a positive when we can go up to them and say, hey, we know you started having a little trouble on this hole. No worries, just try to catch up. And they're like, wow, are you watching us from the trees? Or, how do you know that? It's a great tool. So thank you for that part of it.
Yeah, thank you. That's great that you're pointing that out. I think maybe worth mentioning that the names of the players are also part of the information that you have. So who's who before you even head out there.
Right.
I know we have about 15 T-sheet integrations where that pulls automatically from the T-sheet. That's in the private club space, your 4 T's, Club Essentials, Jonas, and so on. I know that you don't have tee times and you really allow players to flow on, if you will, but you still want to know who's on. So how does your team make that work?
What we do is we know about probably 80% of our play for the day first thing in the morning. And it takes us about 15 minutes to upload that manually into the system. It's a pretty easy process. We have every member name downloaded into the system. So all we have to do is start typing their name and it'll automatically populate. So that is that's extremely helpful, seeing who is in the group, because we can target before we approach that group who we're going to approach, because we all are pretty familiar with the personalities of our members, and there's some good people to speak to and others that you want somebody else to give them the message from within the group. So that is extremely helpful, and it's not it's not task heavy on us, even though we don't have a tea time system.
Great. Yeah, amazing. And maybe just go one level deeper. Over time, we now allocate historic rounds that were played to each of these players. So at the end of the season, you would see, like, here's our Mike Smith has played 34 times. And then you can obviously see where do they sit in terms of pace, and how often were they holding up, and are they normally on pace, and all those things. And that's useful information. Let us jump one ahead. Here's another one of those screens. But what this shows is a tablet that's got the live information on it. And you mentioned that you're using those. You're also checking on your mobile phone when you get out there. So you have this with you, as it were. Do you ever show it to the players, or they trust you when you come and have a chat, and you don't?
Well, that's a great question. And what we'll do is we will seldom use that to show it to a group that is pink, because all that does is continue on the negative story, and we don't want to do that. Where it becomes real useful is when we can show it to the groups behind the slow group, just to show them, hey, they're a little behind. They're only 6 minutes behind. They're not that far behind. They'll pick it up. We can show them where they lost that time. But more importantly, it gives them the story that we're working on it. It gives them the story the majority of the time. It's really not as bad as you think it is. So that that helps out a lot, because you can have 6, 7 groups in a row that are all behind pace, and all of a sudden you got the opportunity for 20 to 30 people to really be disappointed. And we ease that pain with this, and it helps out a lot.
No, great. Yeah, and it's the little things, right? And if you do those well, everything else works nicely, because I can just imagine playing a beautiful course like yours that's so well conditioned, and then feeling aggrieved because I feel held up, and then I can't even see the conditioning. It's not even part of my world anymore, because my blood pressure is up already.
Well, it also slows down. It also slows down that group that's waiting on people, because you're spending time showing them something different. Gives the group ahead of them a chance to get out there.
No, that's smart. That's smart. I'm going to make a note on that. Nicely played. Okay, then point number 3, and I promise to keep us on pace, and I think we're doing really well. We're 30 minutes in. Who would have thought? Identified which key pace and flow metrics to measure, because you can only improve if you measure things, and if you measure yourself and you've set standards, and then you achieve that, right? But you need to know what. So here's, we mentioned that earlier, some of that analytics section that Tag Marshall provides. So this is a month, it's July, and we have now information on every single day. These are individual days, 1st of July, right down the 31st, and how it's stacked up against the goal time, which, what is the goal time that you were running this season, Danny?
We have a standard of 4 hours across the board.
That's the gold standard. So here 4 hours, and we're tracking every single group that's played. And in this instance, it's 881. What would you say is a reasonable multiple to apply in terms of if you wanted to know how many rounds that was, how many players? Is it 3 or more?
It's 4, because we'll occasionally have 5-somes and 3-somes, but it averages at 4.
Okay, great. So that's, I mean, that's how you're getting to your 22,000 rounds in what, 7 or 8 months, right? So because you're busy, this was your busiest month. So
correct.
What do we track? Well, we track against average round time, one thing. Then we also, in terms of metrics, we want to know how do the holes run versus how we think they should be running, right? And here you can see 1 to 18, we even have an allocation for the halfway house. Some of the holes are slightly over, some of the holes are slightly under. And this is your hole number 11 plays really quickly. So these are all things that you can then look at making small adjustments to one on the system side, so it tracks it as accurately as possible. But also we have had clubs who have made adjustments to their course, and sometimes it's simple things. It might be choosing a harder or easier setup, right, for a pin placement. It might be taking out a single bush or tree that keeps getting in the way, or it might be planting one if you need to slow down a hole. So all of those things you cannot do, and then you can look at cause and effect, and you can look at data and how are we getting better around this. Then the other thing that we look at is starter accuracy. In your case, obviously you're trying to keep an interval time, even though you're allowing people to come on as they arrive. And then one thing that's very important, and you guys did this really well, is the pace distribution, because the average really is, it hides things, because we have really quick rounds, maybe twosome, threesomes, early morning rounds, and then we have really slow rounds, but it averages out. So the average is only one thing to look at. What we really want to see is how many of those rounds are on pace and fast, and how many are 30, 40 minutes over. So just to give you an example of what you've been able to do at Glen Oak. So in May, when you first started out, you had 700 groups. You're saying times it by 4, so that's your player base. Already you started out well, keeping 83% on pace or within 10 minutes. So that's good standard. And you're coming in at exactly 4 hours and 30 seconds. So yes, a tick. But now in July, because now you're getting into the system and your players are tuning into, hey, we are all in this together, and we're going to talk about that just now. You have 25% more traffic. What happens at another course, if the traffic up 25%, the average round time comes down and the number of holdups increase. But in your case, you've kept the on pace the same, and it's in fact sped things up. So your average round time is down by 7 minutes. So that's 3:53, even though your groups and your traffic's up by 25%. So well done to you and the team for getting into the system just so successfully. What's it been like for you in terms of learning and getting your team dialed into things?
It's been pretty easy because the system does the work. The members have to buy in, and all we have to do is facilitate things. We're just a conduit between the system and the members. And you know, I think probably the most difficult part of the process is the communication on our end to the members. But the easiest part is the tag marshal information that we're getting. And so it was a pretty easy buy-in for the entire staff, and it really has been a great buy-in by the membership.
And that, I think, is part of your success story, I would say. So that is the last point we want to talk to. And you make an important point. So you're using data to measure and continuously improve performance because, well, why would you ever be happy unless it's really perfect eventually, right? Your greenkeeper isn't happy with the 70% success. Like, he always wants to do better. And so do you guys. And so do the players in terms of their own game, right? They're all driven to do better. And then how do you do that? Well, you need to benchmark and you need data. And this is, here's one example. We mentioned that every single round that you're tracking, every single one of the 22,000 has got a track map with it. This is something that comes in handy if you need to have a conversation with a player, or maybe a player storms into the clubhouse and because they perceived something went wrong, and now you can look at exactly how things actually transpire. Right. You'll be happy to hear that we have adjusted the names of these players. So we're not giving anyone away, but this group came in at 36 minutes over and they were holding up others, and your team did work with them, but they still didn't quite come back. So yeah, what's to have this information available, has it been helpful at all to you guys this season?
Absolutely. You know, let me get away from the difficulty of it. The best part of all this is objective data. It's not us perceiving somebody as being slow, or a golf chairman not liking somebody because he's perceived to be slow. This is objective data. And when you have that, it tells a story for you. All you have to do is find a way to deliver it, but it tells the story. We don't. And we've had a lot of success with only a few instances where we've had to utilize this information, and word spreads. Once people know that somebody has been addressed, that the golf committee's not taking it lightly, it only enhances the buy-in on the members.
No, that's great to hear, and I think we hear that often is data and facts versus opinion versus perception, right? It changes the game, and you can have a really calm conversation because you've got the facts. Down here is a text message from I've seen the link. It says Oakmont. Just maybe one addition to add. So our system allows for, let me jump back. It allows for alerts to be generated. So that can be a pace alert. You can set, I want to know if somebody's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes off, and then get that in my pocket. We can do geofence alerts as well, so that you don't have to look at the system all the time. It's great that you have line of sight, but on a day where things flow nicely, you get busy with other things, right? So that's when you want to make sure that when it matters, we communicate you on the channel that works best for you. Let's jump ahead to some more data, and also maybe, what this does is, and our customer success team, there's a bunch of data nerds that analyze things and then feed that back to the clubs and also make recommendations. So this is your season starting out at 4 hours. Obviously, you've done the training and you were ready to roll, and then a slight increase in rounds. So this is in average round time. So this is your green graph, but the important one is the gray one, which is number of rounds in the month. So these are individual months. So here's your busy period. It's really short, right? 6 months where things are happening. But what was fantastic to see just purely from a data point of view is that you've effectively achieved a 15-minute gain. This is where things come down comfortably under 4 hours, even though your play was massively up. Look at your play here initially, and then your play is 25% higher, but your average round times come down so well. And what we always like to see and also support you with is to keep at it so that you can consistently improve, right? And this data really tells that story. And that is why, we're delighted to award you with a Platinum Partner Award. And this is purely based on data, not because we like you, which we do, but purely based on your performance. And I think, when we're going to talk about member communication, this is something that we can obviously simplify, but this is a great story for you to share with your members because they have helped you guys achieve that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Again, the data tells the story, and you can tell a story however you want with data, but this is all positive. It's all good.
And the 4-hour ambition, is that, how do your members feel about that? Is that they're bragging about the conditioning and they're bragging about we play fast at Glen Oak?
Well, it all depends on who you talk to about the 4-hour round. As we mentioned earlier, some people think 4 hours is a long time, and some people think 4 hours is too quick. But it's been a standard here at the club for a long time, and again, it's a big part of membership communication when they join. That is one of the most important things here, is that they keep pace, and this is helping us in a time where we need the assistance.
Brilliant. Dan, you make a fantastic point that makes it really easy for me to switch slides here. And that is, some people like to play just a little bit swifter, and some people like to just take their time a little bit longer. So another data set that our team has analyzed is, how does your course actually flow in terms of versus time of day, right? So here you've got your average round time, 7 to 8 a.m. is just under 3:30. And then it climbs up into the busy morning, and then just before sort of lunchtime, it starts to drop down again. And then later in the day, when there's not so much traffic, and again, the gray bar is how busy is it, like how many groups are out there. Later in the day, things speed up because there's hardly any traffic any longer. But where it matters is obviously your morning, right? So one of the things that, and you mentioned it now, some players really like to play more quickly, and they say, well, I would if I could. And others say, I'm okay playing 4, 5 or 4 hours, you know. So that the opportunity that many of our clubs now use is to tune their system into what we call variable goal times. Now, we would then look at this and what you could do next season. And I know that's something that you're busy discussing and evaluating. You could start your day, your first hour at 3:40 and say, okay, who puts up their hand, say we want to play quickly, and then you stagger up at 3:50 and then you move to the 4-hour standard, right? How do you think that would go down with the players, and do you think that this might help you get even quicker around Glen Oak?
Well, I think our board is going to embrace it. One thing that we're constantly doing is being a private club and somewhat old school. We've got times where certain categories are allowed to play or not to play, and where we catch those peaks that you see in the 10 to 11 hour, and then the 2 to 3 hour, or the 1 to 2 hour. Those are during our guest times when we allow guest play. And so the members, the board can see that it does slow down during that guest time. Do we move the guest time to a different time, or do we encourage the members not to play during that guest time? So it gives us more information than just who's playing quickly. It helps us, set up our protocols. But our board, I think, is really going to embrace the variable goal time because there are people that like to play in 3.5 hours, and they do, as long as nobody's holding them up. So,
and some of them might be sitting on the board.
Great. Yeah, we got to be careful of that.
No, sure. But I think one of the key things to make this work is obviously communicate and get the buy-in, and that's the last point we want to tackle.
Right.
How have you done this? But before we go there, just one of the other variables that you can now start to look at is, and we've got so many clubs that do this so well, is when we're playing more quickly, we can actually tighten our intervals a little bit. I know that that you have guidelines around this. You don't have strict tee times, but many clubs would say, well, now we can run this at 8 minutes. And here the high volume part of the day, we run at 10 minutes. Now, what the 8 minutes allows you, if you do it for an hour, it's an additional tee of time created. Right. And why is it possible? Because people are moving more quickly. So they get away from the group off the tee box further in 8 minutes, then the slower playing group later on gets away the same distance in 10 minutes, technically, right? So we can now create more capacity, and some clubs are saying fantastic, like Oakmont, for instance, this year created another 2,000 rounds that they never had with this strategy, because they had so much demand for play, right? And then obviously at a daily fee course, that means dollars. Brilliant, right. Why not, right? Right. As long as you're making sure that everyone's experience is respected and well looked after, everybody wins here. So yeah, this is something that we're excited for you to start exploring, and I'm delighted to hear that you feel like the leadership at the club would be interested in. The last point, Danny, is another one of those 5 points is you communicated with members and guests, and you created a culture of pace awareness. Right. So it's no longer a grudge topic, but it's something that everyone's aware of, and actually there's some pride behind it. So tell us how you did that, and here's a few notes that we made. How did you do the communication? Firstly, how did you go about telling them we're getting a system, and then what was the buy-in like, and then how do you go about communicating just in general, just to keep things positive?
Absolutely. We began the process of communicating in the springtime via newsletter, both to the entire club, but also one dedicated from me just to our golfing members, acknowledging the importance of pace of play, that we accept that is important to them. And so this service basically allows us to enhance that. Before we got the system, the members were pretty good at owning it. They all understand that pace is important, but perception of pace was so inaccurate. Once they started seeing, we would post averages in the locker room on occasion, especially the good ones, and not by name and not by tee time, but just in generality. And we kept them posted every couple of weeks via newsletters that pace was going well or pace was a little behind. And in a matter of maybe 2 months, people were asking what their finish time was. People were asking what color their tag number was when we were driving around visiting with them. So no longer are they hiding when they see the staff driving around. They're anxious to see, how far ahead are we? How far behind are we? So our communication to them, and more importantly, their buy-in to the process, is what's made it so successful. We even have to a point where the majority of the members don't realize the carts are tagged, and we put our walking tags on the first tee with us so we can assign them as we're sending groups out. We've had a couple groups in a cart grab a tag when we weren't up there just to make sure that they were being documented because they wanted to play fast.
Yes.
And fortunately, we can find on the map that we've got 3 tags in one group, and that ain't right. So we go visit them, and there's been a lot of fun to it.
Sure.
It doesn't eliminate the slow players. All our clubs, we have our guys that defy the fact and don't agree that they're slow players, and they can be a challenge for us, but it brings all the information out to them, and having everybody on board has been a big help.
Yeah, nice and well done. And you really put a good program in place and executed well on it. You mentioned that there are those that need a little reminder. So how do you make sure, if you have to, that you make sure that they know about it and also take it seriously? What is your process around that?
Well, we have our golf committee is very active in that our process basically is a conversation with me and the member if a group is slow. And if it goes beyond that, they then get a letter from the golf committee where we will utilize one of the bar graphs that shows that they're a pink group that played slow, and it'll show all the yellow groups behind them or orange groups behind them. And so we've got data and we've got concrete information that shows how they impacted the pace of play for 10 groups behind them. And then beyond that, we haven't had to go any further. We haven't had to have any discussions or letting people know that they can only play during certain times of the day if they're not going to keep pace. Although those steps are in place, once we get beyond showing the graph and using the data to let them know that, you don't feel like you are impacting things, but you really were.
Sounds like the information is making everyone's lives a little bit easier at the club.
Absolutely, more transparent, no doubt.
Yeah, sure. We are 50 minutes into our round here, and perfectly on pace. I'm a good caddy, am I not? No, I'm only joking. I hope there's some questions from our guests. Let's see if we can. Okay, there is a question here. Are you able to track maintenance staff and machinery? You mentioned your superintendent being a master. Or are there any tools they can use? I don't know if that's something that you do yet.
We don't utilize it, but you can. I'm sure you can tag all your maintenance vehicles just the same to see where they are at and the traffic that they put onto the golf course.
Yes, you're quite right. So in our world, on the map that they turn out as blue, and then we have different icons for a mower or just a mover. And often the superintendents then actually start looking at the live play, because if there's a gap in the field, well, they can send one of the team out to get things done, right? That might be hand irrigating or things like that. they can get more done, and they can also obviously keep line of sight of their team. Are they where they're supposed to be, you know, and get some efficiencies out there. And if one thing that we've learned this season is that labor and staffing is getting more difficult, right? So wherever we can find efficiencies, it's something worth looking at. What's that been like in your area? Have you found things changing?
Yeah, we're able to kind of schedule and stick to schedules as much as we can in our industry. And what I mean by that is we're not floating around looking for things. We know when we have to go address groups, and we schedule when we go out and see people usually. But it helps. We can get things done. If we need to be doing something in the office, we can do it while we're watching the map, and then be proactive when we need to. And so we've definitely been more efficient with fewer people.
Great. Yeah, I think you've done such a thorough job here. There are no further questions.
Okay.
And yeah, great. Thank you. This was a delightful conversation. Really, thank you so much. And I look forward to visiting Glen Oak when I'm in Illinois next. Would love to swing by.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you must enjoy a break. And are you heading down to the PGA show? Are you finding some Florida sunshine?
I will be doing so. Go visit mom and dad for a couple of days, and then do the trade show for a couple of days.
Oh, fantastic! They're down there. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you down there. We're certainly going to be there.
Great.
We'll be different, but we'll make the most of it.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, also thanks everyone for listening in. And yeah, it's been great. Okay. Take care.